We all know about the dangers caused by the recent outbreak of coronavirus. Thousands of sick patients flooding healthcare systems, travel restrictions, forced quarantine camps, and death. But the biggest impact is yet to be felt. Hi, this is Cam, and welcome to the Need to Know 360. The economic impact from the current outbreak of novel coronavirus is only just getting started, and will certainly eclipse the economic impact from other pandemics such as SARS and swine flu. Even if we think about the importance of China in global trade, we can begin to understand how big of a problem this is going to be. Take the nearest item on your desk, or your smartphone that you're watching this on. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be made in China. Right now, millions of Chinese workers are quarantined at home instead of working in factories. Thousands of trucks are sitting dormant without any goods loaded in them, and dozens of ports in China are unmanned with no dock staff to load or unload cargo ships. What happens when the world's factory takes sick leave? In addition to this, China is no longer just an exporter, but a huge buyer of foreign goods as well. At the time of the SARS pandemic in 2003, China's GDP was a modest $1.7 trillion and mostly produced cheap goods such as t-shirts and children's toys. However, China's economy has since ballooned to be $14 trillion in annual GDP, the world's second largest economy. China is now a fundamental link in the global electronic supply chain, providing components for iPhones, laptops, and automobiles. In addition to this, China is now a huge consumer. New Zealand milk, Australian iron ore, American soybeans, and Canadian seafood are all billion-dollar exports that will be affected by this pandemic. The economic impact caused by having this important pillar of the globalized economy in quarantine will be nothing short of detrimental. Already here in New Zealand, we have begun to feel the initial effects of this contagion on our economy. The New Zealand Herald reported on the 4th of February that logging sites have had to cease operations immediately, leaving dozens of families reliant on the forestry industry without an income. We also saw reports that exports of seafood such as crayfish have been cancelled due to the virus outbreak, meaning that many workers in the fisheries industry have missed their busiest period of the year to export seafood. These were only the initial effects on the economy. We are now hearing news out of Korea and Japan that vehicle production will be put on hold as the components to build cars are unavailable while Wuhan is under lockdown. Wuhan is considered the automotive hub of China, and many crucial components for vehicle manufacture are produced there. Most worrying of all is the recent disclosure that China is responsible for the manufacture of 70% of all the raw ingredients needed for pharmaceuticals, and possibly 97% of antibiotics imported by the United States. These are just some of the more worrying examples, but it is most likely that every industry will feel the gnawing teeth of the coronavirus to at least some degree. The last respiratory contagion to wreak havoc on global markets was the SARS outbreak of 2003. It is estimated that the virus, which infected roughly 8,000 people and killed slightly less than 800, was responsible for the loss of $40 billion globally, and a 1% drop in GDP for China. The coronavirus has dramatically shot past the SARS numbers within a matter of weeks in terms of infections and deaths. Currently, the total infected is sitting around 70,000, and the total deaths close to 2,000, but by the time I release this video, those numbers will have certainly increased. On one dramatic day last week, we saw the total number of confirmed cases increase by 15,000. 15,000 in one day, which is almost double the total amount of people who were infected with SARS. If we think back to the SARS pandemic and the fact it caused $40 billion in damage to the global economy, when China wasn't even in the top 5 world economies, imagine the impact this virus is going to have. Currently, China is the world's second largest economy. They are the source of most goods produced in the world and an integral part of the global supply chain, which maintains the world's flow of product consumption and thus capital. But this isn't even the scariest thing to think about. The scary thing to think about is what is going to happen to a world economy that 10 years ago was in the grips of the most devastating recession since 1929, when it is hit by an economic catastrophe such as this. Truth be told, the world's economy never actually recovered from the Great Recession of 2008. Yes, stocks are up and unemployment is at record lows, but the training wheels put onto economies by central banks to get us back on the road have still never been removed. When the recession hit in 2008, central banks used quantitative easing, the printing of money to pump into the stock market, in a desperate attempt to save the world's economy. In addition to this, interest rates were cut to record lows, and we now see interest rates on our savings accounts at a piddly 2 or 3% per annum. This also meant that getting finance from banks for mortgages or business loans became ridiculously cheap. Large companies at the moment can essentially get free money from banks due to the record low interest rates set by central banks. But what does this all mean in relation to the coronavirus? Currently, risk assets such as stocks are pumped to all-time highs due to the record low interest rates and quantitative easing by central banks. We can see examples comparable to the infamous dot-com bubble, where at the moment the stock price of chipmaker AMD trades at 300 times what it makes in profit each year. Also, because central banks and governments never took away these training wheels, so to speak, as they wanted stocks to continue to grow and go up no matter the cost. We now have no training wheels to use if the current ones break. To be blunt, if the coronavirus has a significant impact on the world economy, which triggers another financial crisis, not only will it be much worse than 2008, but the governments of the world will have absolutely no tools to deal with the situation. The direct impact of this virus may be significant. However, the impact it will have on the economy could cause the 2020s to be a decade of low growth, mass unemployment, and the multitude of other problems that come along with this. If you haven't already, it might be a good idea to start saving some cash for a rainy day, because the forecast ahead is looking very gloomy.